Chapter number 12, function. So a function is a block of code which only runs when it is called. You can pass data, known as parameters, into a function. A function can return data as a result. So in this session, we'll learn about creating a function, how to call a function, and how to pass an argument or a parameter into a function. Let's look into an example for the function. So I've written this sample code. Now if you can see, the light is green, so there's no code improvement suggested by PyCharm. Also, just wanted to let you know that the indentation, you can either use for space or you can use tab. So but PyCharm sometime is temperamental. If you use if you mix and match a tab and spaces, then it does complain sometimes. So either stick to a tab uh, with uh, four spaces, or just stick to spaces, adding spaces yourself. Just a tip for you. So here the function, I've defined a function called my function. And it's a very simple function where I've got a print statement saying um, hello from a function, yeah. And I'm calling this function. So when a Python code is executed, it'll go from line number 1, it'll go down, it'll encounter a function, uh, but it won't do anything at this point. It'll just go to line number 7 and execute this function. When this function my underscore function is executed, it'll go to line number 3 and run the line number 4, and you will see the print statement. So before I go down to line number 14, let's run this program and let's see how it behaves. So as you can see, it my line number 7, where I'm calling the function name, it just executes the function and prints me hello from the function. Then it'll print the separator, which I've given using print statement. Now after that, I've defined a second function. Now the idea of this function is, like here you can see I've not passed any parameters here. Yeah. So in this I'm passing the name and then I'm printing hello the name. Yeah. So in this next line number 18 to 20, I'm passing in the name Steve, Harry, and Lisa. And then for each of this call, I get my output as hello Steve, hello Harry, hello Lisa. Now let's see what happens if I don't pass anything. Yeah. So let's see if I do this. So I'm not passing anything. I'm saving this file. And so what should happen here? Yeah, because this function is expecting a name, but I'm not passing a name. Let's see. Yeah, as you can see, it has the program has during runtime, it has print Harry, like Steve Harry. When trying to execute this line number 20, it is giving me error. Yeah. So let's restore. So how do we overcome this problem? Like in the case where I don't know whether my function will have an parameter or not. So let's look at the next example. So my function 2. Uh, so Python provides you with this. So here, kids, star kids. So it basically is saying I can have multiple argument. If in case I don't know how many argument I'm going to pass, then like 3 or 4. So in this example, I'm passing 3, uh, and the second line number 32 is 3, line number 33 is 4. So let's run this again. Yep. So this is the output. So I'm passing three names and four names, and each time line 28, 29 is getting called. And the idea is the youngest person is the second uh, item. So Steve becomes 0, Harry becomes 1, and Lisa becomes 2. So hence I'm getting Lisa. Now coming back to our problem where what if we don't know if the name is going to be passed. Python has provided you with the default parameter. So I'm calling my function 3, first time with UK, second time with India, but third time I'm not passing the any parameters. So so what this does is it assigns a default value to the parameter. So if nothing is passed, country is Norway. Um, Otherwise, the country is whatever you have passed in. So the country value of country becomes whatever you passed in, and then I'm printing. So here you can see when I call my function 3 4 times, it prints UK, India, Norway, USA. So a nice feature provided by Python. And my function 4. I'm creating a list, square bracket as we know is list by now. So I'm creating a fruit, apple, banana, cherry, and the fruits is a list. So when I run my function 4 in line number 59, I'm passing in a list fruits. Um, that will eventually call this code. Fruits will be passed in the form of a list, and in the for loop, food, the value x, which is an iterator now, it will have a value first apple, and then I'm printing apple. Then it'll have banana and then cherry, and it'll print the three. So let's have a look in our. So as you can see, it has printed apple, banana, and cherry. And finally, uh, in this example, I'm kind of a similar example to earlier, where this time I'm passing a number. So I'm saying call my function 5, and I'll pass a number 3, number 5, and number 9 here. So here the value first time when I'm calling line number 68 with number 3, the value of x here becomes number 3, and it returns 5 into 3, 15, and then it gets printed here. So as you can see here, similarly, all these values are printed. So that's a brief introduction to function, and I've gone through different variation in function with no arguments, one arguments, multiple arguments, default argument. So let's go through a few of the built-in function provided by Python. There are several dozens of them. I've listed them, all of them. So I would request you to pause your video here and just read this. For example, just we'll go through a few of them. So apps is this function basically returns an absolute value of a number. So Boolean will return Boolean value of a specific object. So yeah, just pause your video here, go through all of this. There might be some questions from here in if at all you plan to give your certification. You will use this in your day-to-day programming life, some of these functions for sure. So this is the first list. Second list is here. We have used a few of them in the second list, like we have used float, like returning a float number. Also, we have used input, where we are allowing user to input. We have seen several examples of it, and then we have seen int as well. Uh, and third is, yeah, the third list also, the length we have seen, list we have seen returns a list. Minimum is return the smallest item in an iterable object. and so on and so forth. So yeah, just pause the video and just read this list of built-in function. And finally, this one, print. We know we have used it so many times, and yeah, we have used range, we have used type. Um, so there you go. Those are the built-in functions. It's good to go through all of them and read through and just understand what all the differences and what are the features of this built-in functions. Now, a brief talk about iterators. Now, an iterator is an object that contains a countable number of values. An iterator is an object that can be iterated upon, meaning that you can traverse through all the values. Now, in our earlier example, we have seen a list. We are passing a list here. Here we are passing the list, and so in turn, Python converts the X is an iterable object, and uh, in this for loop, it becomes iterator, and the value of food gets iterated over the for loop. So to explain iterator, let's go to our code again, and I've written. So in this example, I've written. So as we have seen earlier, fruits has got value a list apple, banana, cherry. Now the iter we have not seen this till now. So iter is an iterator, and fruit is a list. So we are saying basically my it is the iterator object, and now instead of going through the for loop, we can also say print next in my IT. So my iterator, the object, print the next item into it, and then I'm printing this three times. So I get the next first item I get is as apple, the second one banana, and third one cherry. Now I put this print so that we exactly know where our iterator object is. Um, so printing this. So this is the place where I am printing apple, banana, and cherry. So as you can see, this is the use of a iterator. But um, also in a for loop, it is already converting into this object, and it's going through the for loop. Uh, so automatically doing the next for you. So that's it for function, the iterator, and let's go to the scope now. Now, scope is very important in terms of uh, understanding the scope of a variable. And so let's go through this. When you define a variable inside a region, so a variable is only available from inside the region it is created, and this is called as a scope. Now, in a nested scope, the variable is not available outside the function, but is available for any function. So let's assume you have defined a function, and you got a next nested function. So a function inside a function. Now, if you define a variable in the first function, the main function, that variable will be available for all the functions inside that function, but it won't be available outside that function. Third one is a variable created in the main body of the Python code is is a global variable and belongs to global scope. So we'll see an example of this. So any variable which is defined in the main body belongs to, you can access that variable anywhere inside the function, outside the function, from anywhere. Okay. Now if you operate with the same variable name inside and outside. So if you define a variable, for example, x in the main body and inside the function, then Python will treat it as a two separate variable, one available in a global scope and one available in the local scope. If you want to make any variable global inside a function, then you use a global keyword. Now, all of this might sound a bit complex at this point of time, but as soon as we go through some example, it will all become clear. And so let's go through it. All this understanding of scope is very important and is a favorite interview questions because the interviewer would like to know your understanding of scope. So let's go through it. Now, as you can see, the code is doesn't PyCharm is not giving me any recommendation, and we already know the indentation is either a tab or a four spaces is ideally recommended by PyCharm. Um, so here, what I'm doing is I'm defining a function from line 4 to line 6, and I've got a variable x which has got a value fix 50. Now this x has got a scope of local scope, like the scope of the value x, variable x, is inside this function. Yeah. So when I print this print x, so let's do this. So uh, run. Okay. So when I call this function, this code is getting called, and the print x has access to this variable x, and it gets printed. So I get 50. Now, for example, if I say after this print x, I want to access this variable x outside in the main code, main Python code, then the Python will straight away uh, tell you the x is unresolved. You can't execute this code. So because variable x is not available outside. Yeah. So there you go. That's our first one. Uh, Second one is let's go through the nested scope first. Now here I am defining a function inside the function. So the first function is my function, and I'm defining a variable called x and giving it a value 300. And there is another function inside. So if you can see the indentation, it is matching this. So another function called my inner function, and I'm trying to access uh, I'm printing x, which is defined in the first function. Yeah. So this is this value, the my inner function has got access to the function because it is part of this main function. uh, and here I'm calling minor function from inside the main function. So the code, the way it will execute it in line number 12, I'm calling my function, which will uh, go to line number 4, and then it'll define x is equal to 300. Then inside this, it'll look at this code, but it won't execute it. It'll come to line number 9, which is calling the inner function. At this point, it'll execute line 7 and 8, and it'll print x. So let's execute this. Yeah. So x is getting printed as 300. Yeah. Now let's see if this x is available outside. So as soon as I try to access this from outside in line number 13, I'm getting error from Python. So yep, so that's our nested scope. Now a global scope. I've kept an error here purposely because PyCharm or Python is trying to tell me there is uh, a variable x defined in line number 3 for 300, but I'm using the same variable here. Yeah. So do I want this? So uh, internally, Python what is doing is it'll assign this variable is x and is in the global scope, and the variable defined inside this function, my function, this variable x is in the scope of this my function, and it's local to it. So when I do this print statement in line number 9, it'll print value 200. But when I do a print in line number 14, line, it'll print 300. So let's execute this. So as you can see, uh, first is my function will be executed and it has printed line 200, and then print x in line number 14 gets 300 gets printed. Yeah. Now to overcome this global x, so I can say x is global. Yeah. So let's see what happens here. So I've defined x is 300, but in line number 7 I'm saying x is global. Yeah. And I'm assigning a value 200 to x. So when I run my function, I definitely know I'll 200 will get printed. But at this point of time, will 200 get printed or 300? That's a good question. And let's run the scope and we'll see 200 is getting printed. Now, why is that? Because we have assigned x, defined x as a global scope. So this value of this gets changed as soon as this code is executed, and the value of the global x, the x variable, which is now both of this x is global scope, and the value gets assigned to 200. Um, and there you go. So that's all about scope. So in this session, we have learned about function and different variation of function, and we have learned about iterator as well, and different scope. So yeah, please practice, and in next two sessions we will be doing some real life examples. Whatever we learned so far, we'll try to apply them in our real life example. I have provided the links in the description below for the Python and PyCharm download. I have also recommended 3 Python books to enhance your knowledge. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching.